After 15 years and a lot of hyping it up through the Deadpool trilogy, Wolverine and the other regenerating Canadian have finally teamed up on the big screen properly. And while it's simultaneously making infinite bank at the box office and getting lambasted online as a gratuitous, soulless cameo fest full of pandering nostalgia bait and bad Reddit jokes, my hot take is that I liked it. Deadpool 2 is still better. Logan is still way better. But Ketchup and Mustard did some interesting things that I liked in its messily meta methodology. These two rivals may be destined to only meet during writers' strikes, but this time it worked out. And in the spirit of acknowledging flawed movies for their place in history, there would be no Deadpool 2 or Logan if it wasn't for a crappy little movie that screwed things up called X-Men Origins Wolverine. The theme of the day is looking back on a less than successful attempt and saying, you know what? You tried. You failed, but at least you tried. And in the long run, that did help. Red and Yellow is a loving tribute, a flawed love letter to flawed movies that don't get much recognition for how they shaped the Marvel brand as it exists today. And even though they all fell behind, fading into obscurity in the shadow of the next big superhero fad, there's still a place for them in the ever-expanding history of Marvel's indelible mark on cinema. Deadpool and Wolverine is the obituary for Fox's failed Marvel universe.
But I'll be seeing you.
I love that it's a movie that wallows in the mud and plays with broken action figures that were buried there decades ago by kids who don't even remember losing them. I feel like people went into this with the expectation of seeing Hugh's Wolverine finally get to meet Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man or Tobey's Spider-Man, and then they were let down that the caliber of cameos was all movies that were failures. There's no Iron Man. This movie's got Jennifer Garner's Elektra in it. And it's great that there's no huge MCU characters in here. All you get is Happy Hogan directly telling you, yeah, Iron Man won't show up. Good! That wasn't the point of all of this. This movie isn't about propping up how awesome they are and making you clap for the successful superheroes. It's about getting you to feel some empathy for the fuck-ups and failures that were cast aside. Deadpool, Wolverine, and all our other heroes are all failures in their own way. They didn't achieve the greatness they strove for. Wolverine let his version of the X-Men die because he didn't want to be a team player. Deadpool was in a big depressive emotional funk in his life because he didn't make it to the big leagues, and the world he comes from is closing up shop due to a corporate merger that he's the only one who can comprehend. And all these other characters couldn't save the worlds they came from, so they ended up in the Void. The Void is used as a purgatory for failed Marvel franchises that didn't take off in the same way, which is thematically clever while also staying true to how it was used in the Loki series. I like that they're using the same concept in a different way. I mean, the visuals speak pretty strongly for what this movie's about. It's the epitaph on the gravestone of a massive part of pop culture history that came and went and didn't get a lot of love. I think it's pretty funny that the Void is filled simultaneously with a bunch of Lokis and an army of Deadpools because those are the two biggest troublemakers. He called himself Deadpool Prime for a minute, and I was wondering if that was ego talking, but he is the one that the TVA allowed to keep existing while everyone else got trashed, so I guess he is the one true pool. If I had any criticisms, it's that the entire Deadpool core sequence felt unnecessary. It was really just there for them to have a generic masked enemy force for Wade and Logan to massacre their way through for an action scene. It's kind of adapting a bunch of random shit at once, like the Deadpool core obviously, but also the sequence from Deadpool Kills Deadpool where he's just murdering dozens of variants of himself in a big suicidal war. I appreciate that Deadpool 2099 was there and nothing bad happened to her on screen. They must have known that you can't disrespect her because that would be tasteless. But yeah, this is just like here for fun pretty much, and it does stop the movie dead in its tracks for the third act to do nothing valuable. All of these Deadpools could have been TVA goons, but I don't know. After Loki, I feel kind of bad for massacring those guys. This is the pointless fan service stuff we're talking about. As a longtime Deadpool fan and an avid reader of his comics, yeah, I can appreciate the references and the costumes you showed here as like a Spider Society, everyone's here kind of thing. But narratively, I don't think it was the time or the place. As for everyone else not in a red suit, that I can and will defend. We've gotten a lot of multiverse random cameo sludge in recent years with the Illumawati, Crisis on Killing All Your Favorite Cartoon Characters, and the abomination that was The Flash's third act. These are all pretty transparent and shallow, but I think the way it was handled in a metatextual sense in No Way Home and Spider-Verse had some unique justification. I know this will likely get lumped in with the former, but I'd classify it with the latter because I saw some purpose and some restraint with how Deadpool and Cameo Land handled this ability. I truly admired that they didn't just run away with the concept and have Tom Cruise Iron Man, Industry Plant Captain Carter, or all 3 Spider-Man actors show up just to hang out with Wade because nothing was off the table. It wasn't an unruly glup shitto convention where anyone and everyone was invited. It was guided, calculated, and specific. These are only really cameos from the aborted Fox Marvel projects. Plus, one obnoxious, stupid fan cast for good measure, but it was in a montage, I can let it slide. I didn't really like the inclusion of the Illuminati and Dr. Freak too, because the members felt random and eye-rollingly dumb, and it didn't matter to the rest of the movie, but I will give points for brutally murdering all of them for fun. I know people will say Deadpool and Friend is meaningless, point at the screen and clap slop, but I didn't feel that way. Only one cameo in the whole movie would get that reaction because his movies were good, but everyone else is like, oh, that guy? From that movie? The bad ones? No one's gonna clap for Channing Tatum Gambit. I bet most people didn't even know what the hell that was a reference to. But I think him being there had more meaning than Calvin or Krasinski Reed Richards. We sort of tend to ignore the bulk of it now, but historically the Fox Marvel movies were a huge part of Marvel's push into being a cultural juggernaut. These older movies made a lot of kids and adult newcomers into fans of Fantastic Four, Daredevil, Blade, and the X-Men, even if the quality was all over the place. Maybe not so much New Mutants. I don't know. But now that whole era is gone, and half of the entire puzzle of Marvel movies has been ravenously absorbed into the other, cluttering the pieces as we try to find a new image to make from all of this. Like a twin eating the other in the womb so that it could be the one that lived and continues on. I mean, I'll never say Fox's Marvel stuff was perfect. It had a lot of problems, but it also had a lot of successes too. X-Men ushered in the modern superhero renaissance. They played the opening show that set the stage for Spider-Man to blow everyone's minds. Blade also teed them up for that too, God bless his vampire soul. They had plenty of great movies interspersed between the bad ones. I know there are people out there who also have a lot of love and nostalgia for those short-lived projects too. I watched them as a kid too, and honestly I didn't really feel it for any of these, but I guess in that sense the movie wasn't really catering to me. I never adored the 2005 Fantastic Four, or thought Affleck's Daredevil was cool, but Deadpool 3 does try to make a statement that it did matter if it mattered to someone. If some small section of people loved those movies, warts and all, then maybe they weren't totally worthless. I think you'll be hard-pressed to find the guy who's like the diehard defender of Elektra, but I'm sure he's out there. This movie really has so much love and admiration for displaced, forgotten, unloved movies and characters. Stuff that was once discarded and deemed unworthy is treated with a lot of reverence and playful joy. It's very cute. No one liked Jennifer Garner's Elektra. It was a bomb with critics and fans, but she isn't here as a throwaway, quick joke. The movie doesn't punch down on her or the way her movies were. She's not a punchline. She's treated just as cool as Blade in this introduction. Even though the level of fan reverence was way different between the two of them, she's treated as a valid part of the team. Although 2005's Fantastic Four didn't quite get the same treatment. God, that was brutal. But hey, he showed up and they had fun with him, and Chris Evans probably thought that was fun as hell to be a part of. He got to do something he'd never get to do as Captain America.
Susan, just say it once.
No.
Just one time.
No.
She's not gonna do it.
Come on, just one fuck.
Nah, she doesn't want to go to hell.
I like how all of Cassandra Nova's, like, boring one-note henchmen are all boring one-note henchman villains from previous X-Men movies, too. And the arc of the film has this sort of palpable distaste for the anti-Fox pro-MCU elitism that was a thing for a while. Like how we all sort of acted like if Fox made it, it had to have been bad. But if Disney made it and had their Marvel Studios logo on it, then it must be good. If it's not in the shared universe, it's not worth it. It has to be in the shared interconnected universe. The credits in particular give this warm feeling like, man, fuck you, those movies matter too, and we loved making them. These were part of the history, and people worked hard on them, and there was a love there too. Paradox is like a parody of a Disney executive, and he talks up the MCU's sacred timeline as this wonderful, perfect, awesome version of the universe, and every other Marvel universe must be lame trash that's allowed to wither and die because it wasn't as successful. All these other worlds get left to languish and burn out. Fox's universe lost Hugh Jackman as their main selling point, and then fell to the wayside, slowly dying until being bought out and consumed by the MCU. And Deadpool himself buys into that hype. He's excited to be an Avenger and cross over with the MCU and meet Thor and all this shit, even spitting on Fox's name for a moment. But then he realizes how shitty it would feel to be lumped in with all these abandoned characters that never got a proper chance at a franchise. It sucks to be thrown away into the void because you didn't make as much money as the Avengers did, and maybe those characters weren't so worthless after all. And I'll admit, I was guilty of that too. I took the Fox movies for granted just because they didn't have the big team-up crossovers and big event movies or whatever the hell. I kept saying, sell it to Disney, sell it to Disney, sell it to Disney, and then they finally did, and I went, oh no. So in a way, this movie also felt like them going, here's all the shit we weren't capable of doing back then too. Here's a Blade, Fantastic Four, X-Men, and Deadpool crossover. They weren't able to utilize those IPs in that way back in the day, not for lack of trying, but they have the resources to do it now just as that whole half of the Marvel story is getting completely trashed. It's like a big going out of business party where there's no more rules because no one's worried about being fired anymore. The company is shutting down. Steal your printer right out of your cubicle. No one cares if you do it now. I'm not wild about the execution of the astonishing Wolverine costume, but I love how they implemented it thematically for Wolverine's character and how this works as a way to symbolize Wolverine as an idea. We've never met this incarnation of him before, and that's by design. He's a generic, neutral Wolverine that Deadpool picks out of the lineup of dozens of other ones because of how non-specific he is. He's wearing the costume because he's not the Wolverine we've lived with all these decades, but visually he's like a preset that can stand in as a representative of that character's legacy and the franchise he carried on his shoulder for 20 years. He's also got this guilt because he feels like the X-Men died because he wasn't there for them, which is a meta-commentary on how that franchise was shuttered as soon as he left them. Without their Wolverine to hold them up, they didn't survive. Hugh is wearing the dead X-Men movie series as his costume. Logan was obviously a better send-off to Wolverine as a character, absolutely, and you simply can't beat that. But this is a nice send-off to what he was a part of, and a send-off to Hugh Jackman's Wolverine as an icon and his place in Marvel's complicated history. Hey, wait a minute, I thought Logan took place in 2029 after all the X-Men died from one of Charles' dementia attacks. How can he be the Logan from the Deadpool movies if the X-Men are still there, including Colossus, and that movie takes place in 2023? You know what? It doesn't matter anymore. This is the Fox X-Men franchise. There's no timeline, just vibes. It's only fitting that they go out being confusing one last time. Deadpool's arc in this movie is realizing that he doesn't need to fit in with the Avengers to be important or loved. He's perfectly happy staying where he is in an abandoned and irrelevant universe full of iterations of characters that don't sell as many tickets. But he loves these people here, and that's good enough. Hey, these guys were cool in their own way. They tried. They have a place in this big 20-year-long story. Blade was fucking awesome, and hey, even if it didn't work out, maybe Fox's unmade Marvel projects could have had some merit too if they just got a moment to shine. Channing Tatum's Gambit was there as a representative of the movies they didn't get to make, in addition to the ones they did. And it was nice to see him showcase what that could have looked like. I think that's a lot more interesting than the CGI Superman fighting a giant spider. It's similar, there's a comparison to be made there, but it's less like a meaningless, here's a sloppy-ass glup shitto for the super Reddit nerds, and more of a genuine longing for what could have been, since that project was in development hell for so much longer than any others. The Gambit movie wasn't like a funny anecdote we could all laugh about because it sounded so absurd. Like, gotta have a big spider!
He's like, I got some directives for you if you're going to move forward on the process. Some things I want you to do and don't in the script. And 3, he's got to fight a giant spider in the 3rd act. And I was like, what's that have to do with our non-flying Superman?
It was a passion project that never got made. Like, man, that could have ruled if it got a chance to actually exist with the right hands on it. I never gave a damn about that Gambit movie before now, but in a way I feel sad for it never getting the opportunity. So this was a great way to even give some love to one of the unmade prospective pillars of their universe before it all faded out. I think it had just a little bit more going on than a completely impenetrable inside joke with an ugly CGI character that even the actor completely disowned. Deadpool was Fox Marvel's runaway success, but this story also of course puts Wolverine at the forefront too, since he was their golden boy. Well, he wasn't gold till now. He was the leading man of that whole endeavor, and it only feels appropriate that they use his claws to write the epitaph for it. We'll get more Wolverines and Electras and Gambits and a whole brand new X-Men and Fantastic Four, but Deadpool and Wolverine urges us to just give one last look at the old ones before we close the book on that chapter forever and say, maybe it wasn't all bad. It's okay to move on. It's okay to do new things. But maybe we don't have to completely disregard the failures of the past so completely. They had a lot of flaws. But these movies meant something to somebody, and it's nice to cap them off with a pleasant, fun-loving little battle before hitting the lights on the way out. A fond farewell to the superheroes of yesteryear. Maybe the journey wasn't always pleasant, but Deadpool and Wolverine ends it on the best terms. It's a loving goodbye to the movie universes that shot for the stars and didn't quite make it. Pour one out for the failures. For someone else, they're the winners. I always get mad at YouTube for not putting my videos in the subscription box because people will comment, "Finally, Xavier uploads again after all these years," not knowing 3 other videos came out within the last month already. So maybe that stupid bell icon thing will help you remember I exist. If you want other ways to support the channel, you can always go hit up that Patreon for early videos and exclusive stuff because it's just $1. I'm not kidding, it's only $1. Isn't that cool? If just 5% of the people subscribed to me donated only $1 a month, I could make videos even faster and keep my house. You can also check out our merch on TeePublic, or just buy some of my random stuff on eBay. I have a pretty substantial collection of old toys that are still in the box in perfect condition, so go take a look in case you find something you like. And lastly, since this is a YouTube video and you probably play Fortnite, drop my creator code XavierGM next time you buy a silly dance or a cool character skin. Really helps me out. See you next time!